Hey, everybody. I'm Kurt. This is AC. These are our lady friends.
Women in Youth Ministry.
Yikes,
You
lady
are the
friends.
Youth Ministry Nation.
Yes.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
talk about Youth Ministry.
Yeah.
All right, yo, dude. How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you.
Oh,
How
I'll
are
handshake
you?
all around.
Hey, guys.
Fantastic.
Hello.
We are
totally.
The best.
All right, AC set this one up because this is not our
Yeah.
normal format.
Normally you see these two beautiful faces, but
we don't like to share.
we don't. But we had to. We had to.
Yes,
We were
okay.
looking through some data and we saw that there were no women watching. No.
So you got three. That's your first problem.
These three ladies actually work with us in youth ministry. Well, we're youth ministry partners. She actually works at another church. We'll introduce her in a minute. Let's start with Ashley, who used to be a student, and now she's a year intern here with us.
Yeah.
I'm also a student, but not in
She's
this
still a
ministry any
student.
longer.
She's an intern, awesome. We have Angela, who's actually on staff with our junior high ministry, and she's crushing it. And then we have Emma.
Hi.
How are you?
So
Good.
She's at Church of the Valley, right?
Yep, I work
Church
at
of the
CCV
Valley.
and I do
CCV.
junior high and high school ministry there.
Emma's gonna. I think I'm gonna be with some CCV people on Monday.
Really? Where?
Is anybody from your team going sailing with Pepperdine University?
Okay, we got invited to go, but we can't go.
Oh.
I'm so bummed.
Oh,
Yeah.
They think you're going.
Oh, okay, maybe I'm still going. Pepperdine University.
I'm going.
Okay,
I got it.
all right.
Maybe you'll meet my friends.
Maybe I got
You
it.
don't like the ocean.
Sailing? You don't
That's
go.
true.
Okay, so anyway, so,
Wow,
so,
you have a
yeah, that's neither here nor
Lots
there.
of dreams,
Yeah.
I mean.
So here's what we're gonna do today. Obviously oh wait, we didn't introduce Emma. So
We
Emma
did.
grew up
Yeah.
in Saddleback. Oh, we did.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, she grew
You
up in
can tell
Saddleback.
Yeah. Talk
Yeah,
more
you can
about
totally
that,
talk
please.
about it.
She was one of my students.
Yeah.
Ashley was also.
Yeah.
But they were my students before they were yours.
It's true. Kurt was my junior high pastor.
True that.
Mine too.
He hides his
So
age.
now we can ask. We can ask the question we debate about. Who's the better pastor?
Right. The question everybody
Don't
wants.
do that to
Don't do
yourself.
that.
See? Don't do that to yourself.
Well, I am in the formative years.
Okay, so this is only a 20-minute podcast, and
Yes.
we're burning minutes by the minute.
We're
Right.
good. We're
By the
good.
minute.
It's usually how that works.
One of the topics that comes up all the time in any youth ministry setting, if you go to a conference, there's workshops about it. If there aren't, there should be. I was just at a junior high ministry conference-y thing over the weekend, and they did a late night conversation about this topic, and it was massively, I think every woman at the event went to that late night conversation. And then all the dudes went out to Buffalo Wild Wings.
Nice.
Yeah.
There's the problem.
And we wondered about it, guys.
There's the
What-
problem.
There's the problem.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Let's start
I'm
early.
gonna write that question down. That's another question we have to ask.
We force the ladies to choose between girl and youth ministry conversation
Yeah.
and B-dubs,
Yeah.
which is
That's a hard choice.
Which
That's
They
a
should
hard
really
choice.
go together.
Girls, why can't they be the
I
same
know.
thing?
Why can't we have B-dubs at the conversation?
Yeah.
Girls
I
like
feel we should
Halloween
order it.
conversation.
You would have to bring
I
that
think
up with a
that's fair.
girl that
Wings
organized
and
that.
wisdom on women.
That's true.
It's an alliteration.
It's
Wings,
meant to
wisdom,
be.
women.
Yes.
Wait,
Meant to be.
WW.
Yes.
Wow.
All right.
I like it.
It's a lively bunch.
You need to
It
pattern that.
is. It is.
Pattern
Let's
that.
get into the first question.
So here we go. We're just going to ask you guys some questions about your experiences being women in youth ministry. As a little bit of a disclaimer, Saddleback Church, I think, typically is kind of a guy-dominated leadership structure. In our student ministries, we're about 50-50 as far as women youth pastors versus men youth pastors. But of our 4 departments, 3 of the 4 are led by men, and 1 is led by a woman. So I think there is some learning for us as the guys,
Yeah.
some learning for everybody else. And so what I'm going to ask is that you ladies just speak freely, right? Speak freely. And let's see if we can encourage both our female viewers who are in youth ministry and the guys who are leading and partnering or working for and with women in their own ministry. Okay, question number 1.
All right.
Here's what AC and I were talking about earlier is I've never heard this angle, but assuming that the majority of youth ministries are led by guys, we also know that probably 60 or 60% or so of most youth groups attenders are girls. There's more girls in HSM than boys. There's more girls in junior high ministry than boys. There's more women sitting in the adult services than there are men. What would you guys, what do you guys think are some things that maybe guy-dominated youth groups, from a leadership standpoint, are we neglecting, or what are we doing that isn't paying attention to 60% of our audience? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
In what ways do we do things in a guy way, even though 60% of our audience is female? So it's just talk about that for a second.
I think about two things from like a programmatic standpoint. First of all, even something as simple as during messages, use the examples that we use, the object lessons that we use. Guys would tend to use sports analogies a lot.
Or fire.
Or fire, burning stuff. That's usually it. And even just thinking about more gender neutral examples, things that might be more applicable to the whole crowd.
Right.
Or even in your games, we know that fun breaks down walls if you get kids to laugh, but maybe girls don't always want to play physical games or nasty games that's going to get them dirty, or games that they can't play because they wear a dress to church. So thinking about things holistically like that, I mean, I just think from a platform could be something that they can use.
Yeah. And I just think, like, also just in what you say, like, if you just are calling your students, if you're, talking about them as a whole, don't say guys just off the bat. Just say students. Just keep it really generic, so then you're not discriminating against either side. Because I just feel like that's just a really easy way to just slightly change the way that you address your students. And just saying students, not hey guys.
Or hey everybody.
Hey everybody. Just something that's not just hey guys or hey girls, but just hey students, and just putting them all together and not feeling one, having one feel like left out or anything like that. Yeah.
That's good.
Ashley, you're probably the most recent youth group attendee,
Yes.
right? Was there ever a time where you were sitting in our junior high ministry or high school ministry and kind of going, this is a dude's world?
No, I would almost say that it's times when there's like an overemphasis on girls, like not all girls love pink, and girls play sports, and some girls do like to get dirty and play like crazy games, and so I think putting girls in a box too much too and going on that extreme is more dangerous.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I think I totally agree with that, because I think a lot of times when, let's say, your staff is all men, I think you guys trying to be considerate sometimes turns all the way over to a stereotype, and that's not a healthy thing either. But I think just more being like figuring out the middle ground and just being like a balance and more of an equality thing, rather than trying to fit or just try to shape your ministry towards a stereotype, just like what you're saying. Yeah,
And
that's good.
Also even recognizing the differences between girls and guys depending on what grades you're working with, and like calling those out too, because I think that it's normal to call out the different phases. Boys might respond to a certain circumstance this way, and girls will respond a different way too. So validating where both of them are in their stages of life too is huge, so that neither one of them feels like, oh well, I'm less than this or I'm more than this or whatever it might be, because they're gonna all be in completely different phases, because girls and guys are different.
There is a old adage that I think is old school. I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. Is there some validity to it, or is it just antiquated? Some of the youth ministry training I received back in the day was, if you get the varsity quarterback, if you get the ASB president, if you get the I'm quoting my training. If you get the A-list guys coming to youth group, then you'll get tons of girls, and you won't have to think so much about how do we do girl ministry, because they'll just show up because the guys. So talk about that.
Throw the grenade. Not at us.
No.
Yeah, it was just kind of a, oh man.
I mean,
so sad.
I think there's like an ounce of validity in
I know
that,
some girls.
you know, and also, but like to have people from high schools who would be considered popular, whether they're girls or guys, having them be in the youth group makes a difference for sure. But I don't necessarily, the amount of girls who would come just because the hottest guy at their school is in youth group feels small.
I've heard way more testimonies of guys saying, I went to church for the first time because I thought they were cute girls,
By
than
the way,
the other way around.
And what's interesting about that is because, again, I'm sure today we'll be guilty of painting with a very broad brush a few too many times.
Totally.
But painting with a broad brush,
Kurt.
guys are
You haven't said anything
You
about
just
that.
threw me in there.
painting with a broad
He doesn't want
brush,
to be alone.
guys are shallower and more superficial in lots of areas. That would be one. So I have heard way more often. My own teenage son
Yeah.
has mentioned that way more
Two guys
than
on my
teenage
staff have
daughter
said
ever.
that.
Ever.
Yeah.
Well, I think what I'm kind of like hearing you guys say is, well, when I listen to what you say, I go, I need a girl. I need a woman in my circle, planning, thinking through things with me, because I would totally miss a lot of that stuff. Or I will try and be too intentional, and I'd err on either side.
Yeah.
So I think a great point that you guys kind of like bring out, it doesn't mean you need to now go, okay, well, maybe need to go, what's my ratio
Yeah.
for students to at least volunteer leaders?
Yeah.
And even with those, being able to go, okay, who can I begin to like bring into these conversations?
Right.
on-
If you're a guy
Yeah.
planning youth group every single week in a group of 3 other guys, or even by yourself just as a guy planning youth group at Starbucks,
Yeah.
you need to find ways to have a female voice speaking into the game.
Yeah.
Or here's a different angle. I mean, run your lesson past a
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
And
a
go,
good one.
hey, where can I insert
Mhm.
some female-friendly language,
Absolutely.
a female-friendly example?
Yeah.
Point out stuff that I might say in this lesson accidentally
Yeah.
that would be offensive to a girl
Yeah,
right.
or hurtful to a girl.
Right.
Okay, next question. Good
Okay.
stuff. Next question. Let's speak for a second to the men watching who are the point people for their youth ministry, working with ladies. Maybe they're the supervisor of ladies. Maybe they just got core women on their volunteer team. Help just coach those guys up for a couple seconds about how to lead women well in a team setting. We probably should have let you guys know what the questions were.
No,
Right on the spot.
you're getting straight out.
Let the tape roll.
Yeah.
It
Totally.
is raw and uncut. So.
Yeah.
In all fairness, AC and I were getting ready for the podcast and we didn't know what we were going to talk about.
Yeah.
And lo and behold,
Sitting on the
Ashley,
couch.
Emma, and Angela were sitting
Innocent.
the couch.
You're welcome.
Guys,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, come in here
Well,
for
we
a
always got
second.
to take advantage of.
Can I talk to you for a minute?
of
Of the excellence.
yeah,
Right.
excellence.
Totally.
We're doing exactly. We're taking our own advice.
Yeah.
We're
We
bringing
could-
So smart.
bringing women into the conversation.
Yeah, we
We're
couldn't
like,
do-
This is
we
the
couldn't
pat on
do
the back
this.
he wants for that.
We couldn't do this with a group of guys.
Exactly.
Maybe
This would be a totally different
Girls
conversation.
are-
I would love to
Totally.
hear this conversation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
What was the question?
I don't know.
Oh, like what advice would you give male leaders who are leading
Yes.
women?
Yeah.
I would definitely say first learn her communication style
Yeah.
because guys, I think might be have the best intention, but if you don't know how I might receive something, you could say something to me that in your mind is processing as, oh, this is an encouragement, I'm building her up, but I might receive it as, oh my gosh, that's so offensive, and he hurt my feelings, and not to say that all girls are super sensitive, I just happen to be super sensitive, but
So what I'm hearing you say is communicate.
Yeah. Communicate.
but in a way that's easy.
You mean use
It has
words?
to, you gotta use
All
words.
girls are the same.
You have
That's
to
what my
use
wife
eye
says. That's what my
contact.
daughter says.
I
Words.
know.
Yeah, words.
It's so
Yeah.
hard.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's
so
hard.
That's
But,
good.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good though.
I think, anytime that you're working with a staff of multiple people, you have to figure out each person's individual, like, language. You know what I mean? Like, who they are in a workplace and what they need from you. And I think for, like, if you're working with a woman, obviously there's, like, a slight, like, difference to that. But I think it's the same as you trying to get to know anybody else on your staff and how they work. I don't think there's such a huge difference. I think a lot of times guy leaders feel so much pressure when they hire a female or are working with a female that they think it's a totally different animal, when really we just all do youth ministry. We just speak a different language just like the other guy on your team or someone else. And so I think, yeah, communication is huge for girls in general, I think, but also like face-to-face time at some point in the week. Like, I think that's really, like, I can speak for myself, I can't speak for everybody else, but I feel really valued by my boss, who's a guy, when he sits down with me every Monday morning and we have a cup of coffee and talk about what's on, in our weeks, what's happened in our lives, all that kind of stuff. And so for me, as a woman in ministry, I value that time with our leader.
Absolutely.
Okay, Ashley, this one's for you.
Okay.
Okay, we'll let you start. All right.
Okay.
What would you say to a woman who is in a youth ministry setting? She's called to youth ministry.
Okay.
She's gifted at youth ministry.
Okay.
Right. But she's feeling stifled because she doesn't feel like she has the same level of support or the same opportunities as some of her guy colleagues. How would you encourage a girl who might find herself in that type of scenario?
I would say
I know
make
it's tough
sure.
'cause you've
Yeah.
never felt that here.
Absolutely not.
Just say
I
what
don't
you-
feel
It's a
stifled.
That's
foreign
good.
Yeah.
concept.
She doesn't
Yeah.
feel stifled, everybody.
Just say what you're saying to him. Or
Yeah, just,
you
you want me to step out?
No.
Right, it's kind of like fresh on when your boss is sitting
Yeah.
there, it's like,
Gosh, I think, well, it's important to communicate your needs, and if you feel like you can take on more, don't be afraid to communicate that, because the worst thing that happens is you're like, I can do more, like, I am passionate about this, I'm capable, these are what I feel like my strengths are, like, I can't imagine a super negative way someone would respond to that, rather than be like, oh, I can do it myself, but that feels like that's on them.
Yeah.
And gosh, you're in the right place. You're doing what you care about.
Yeah.
Keep asking for opportunities and seeking those, and investing in the Lord, because He's gonna open doors for you. Like, that's what He does. He opens doors.
Totally.
Oh my
Well
gosh! That was great.
Also,
When would you guys? What would be your barometer of when you would give up on, like, maybe this church isn't the right church for me as a girl, and like when do you suck it up and deal with it, versus when do you go, hey, I need to put myself in a situation that's going to set me up to fulfill my calling in life.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that tension?
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Because that's stuff that most guys, unfortunately, we have to, all of us have to wrestle through all those tension points, but we don't typically have that extra layer.
Yeah.
There's not a church in the country that I would feel like there's any kind of lid on me. I would never feel that because I'm a guy. There's a bunch of them where women would feel that.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
how would you guys navigate it if you truly, genuinely felt that? What's a healthy way in your guys' experience to navigate that?
Yeah.
Well, I think we have to be in healthy places.
Yeah.
Spiritually, emotionally, mentally. Like, we need to make sure we're healthy first. And here's the thing: is that, like, if God is calling us to a place, He's gonna keep us there, and He'll give us the tools to persevere. But I think practically, if you have navigated every angle, you know your leader, you've tried every conversation, and you still feel like there's something inhibiting you, and you feel like God has more, but people are inhibiting you. I think that you have to make a decision then and ask God, okay, God, that He'll open the door for you to leave if it's time. And I think it'll be abundantly clear that it's time for you to exit.
Yeah.
And it's going to be one of those things where the tension will ease when it's time for you to transition out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think if it's a healthy tension, maybe God wants you there to work through it. But if God has more for you, then He'll open a door for you to go somewhere else, and He'll make it super easy. And He'll make it easy for the leadership to release you,
Yeah.
because it won't give you any pushback. I think
Definitely.
it'll
Well,
be a two-way
they
street.
won't if
Yeah.
they put a lid on ladies,
Totally.
and you're leaving because you're a lady who wants to blow past that lid.
Yeah.
Those churches are going to say, God bless you, sister.
See, yeah.
Yeah.
There's the door.
I think there's a healthy amount of self-awareness that needs to be in the beginning part of that discernment process, though. Like, how much of their responsibility that they're not giving you is actually because you're a woman. You know what I mean? And being able to take like, hey, are you having those conversations where you're asking for more? Are you doing a great job when they are giving you more and trusting you with more? And so before you even get walking down that road, your self-awareness of where you're at in that job and how great you're doing in your specific role has to be really high before you're, blaming it on that and thinking that they're not giving me opportunities. And then I totally second everything that Angela said with just, God will let you know when that season's coming to a close. Most definitely.
Yeah, I agree that.
I think it's definitely like two levels to that. One is the church policy or the way the church interprets scripture, which kind of could put a lid on you in the sense of you thinking, man, I feel like because of that policy or because of that interpretation,
which
you
is
should
probably
know
not
going
going to
into
change.
it.
yeah, which
Yeah.
probably not going to change. And then the other side is there is an culture that says women that kind of treats women. There's no policy or scriptural, but it's a culture where you have leaders that do prefer a man in a spot than a woman, and you can visibly see those changes. I think discernment is kind of like what both of you guys are saying in terms of like just your spiritual life being grounded and rooted so that you can before you go off at the handle.
Yeah.
It's not
Right.
just
Yep.
you're just blowing your lid. And
Yeah.
I actually have a question. All of you, three of you are single, right? I haven't talked to you. Am I
Yeah.
Yes.
married yet? I didn't see you married figure.
No.
Single.
What would you say to those who are in youth ministry and they're single and they're trying to balance that life, the single life, but also ministry, which could be your entire life,
Right.
but you're trying to kind of like balance that. What kind of advice would you give to youth leaders that are just starting off, and even some that may have erred on the side of making this all their life? And
Totally.
I think it's a sweet season. I think for me, like, yeah, I'm single and I'm in ministry and I'm really enjoying it. I think there's not that season in life forever. And so for me, like, I have the luxury of being able to go to support one of my students at a football game, or being able to pick them up for lunch or dinner. And there's things like that. Obviously, the balancing, to be like super candid and honest, I'm not great at it. I think I love my job so much, and I've definitely like sat down with myself a couple of times to be like, hey, let's create some better boundaries. But I think also you only get that first season in ministry one time, and I think it's the season of ministry that when you're older and you're a veteran, you look back on with such sweet memories of it. And so I think cherish it and really embrace that season without going overboard and burning yourself out. So I would probably say that.
You only have so much time outside of ministry and the hours that you invest in that, and like as a single person, I get to spend those with a variety of core people who I care about and learn from them, whether they're in ministry or just dear friends and my people, and that's special, and that changes when you're married or dating or whatever.
I'm sure married life is wonderful. We're not
Yeah.
saying
Yeah,
on that.
to make me feel bad.
No, not at all.
It's a great season though.
I'm stuck with the same 3 people.
I think too
So I
though.
was just saying.
It's like I think the key is community though too.
Yeah.
I mean, as a single woman in ministry, you have to be really intentional about the community of people that you bring around you. So make sure that you've got that community of friends that you have in your life group, but also, making sure that if marriage and family is something that you desire to have one day, without rushing and blowing past this sweet season that you're in, like Emma said, also put yourself in circumstances where you are exposed to other people and you can navigate having a full life outside of ministry as well. So do things that you enjoy outside of ministry, have fun outside of ministry, make friends. I mean, I'm brand new to Southern California, so for me, I'm exploring and I'm adventuring all the time. But make sure that you have a solid community around you, because it can get easy to have ministry be your whole life, and then you miss out on really sweet friendships and other relationships that could blossom and bloom while you're in this time as well. So that would probably be the best advice I would give, is just make sure that community is whole.
That's good.
Okay, popcorn question, then we'll sign off.
Okay.
You each have to just boom boom.
Okay.
To best and worst part about being a female in youth ministry in the local church. Boom boom.
Oh
gosh.
Best part
Best and worst.
is the unique way you get to minister to female students.
Yes.
Yeah.
Best part.
Oh man, that was
Worst part.
mine.
Sorry.
What's the
Worst part. Worst part.
Worst part.
The unique way that you get to minister to female students.
That's great.
So funny.
I don't know. I don't necessarily feel this way, but I think
I have a friend who.
sure. Like feeling underestimated
Yeah.
would be the worst part.
I don't know. Best part, being a part of a trend of new youth ministry, a new generation. I think females in ministry is not such an oddity anymore, and I think that's fun to be a part of that. Worst part, I'm the only girl on just the student ministry staff, and so there's just a lot of belching and farting, and so that's the worst part.
I agree.
I'll talk to Justin.
Yeah,
Justin.
seriously.
That sounds like the junior high team.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Best part, I definitely agree about that, about the ministering to young girls. I think best part about being female in ministry is just the unique perspective and it's like listened to. I think that especially here it's highly valued. That's great. I think the worst part is like sometimes having to think through whether I'm going to wear my hair in a ponytail or down, because if I get caught in the helmet of shame, then chocolate milk is going to be all over me.
Yeah.
And then
Totally.
there's always the chance that you could walk away from any circumstance and be filthy.
It's
I think
true.
That's just
part of what we signed up for, though.
It
That's
is.
true.
It is.
That's
But,
true.
you know,
All right. Hey,
it's rough.
guys, ladies, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So tell people how to subscribe and
All
all that
right.
good stuff.
If you're just tuning in for the first time, or you've tuned in since we've started and you've never hit that subscribe button, you can hit it
Yeah,
right
you gotta
here.
do
Right here.
Right here. If you have any questions, or
Not
if
gonna
you
be
have any
there.
questions about this specific show that you may want us to get to these girls,
You can follow us on
and we can,
Instagram.
answer. You can send an email at
Follow.
talkyouthministry@gmail.com, and
Yeah.
you can follow Ashley,
At Ashley Donahue, ASHLEYDONAHUE.
Emma,
Emma, EMMA, AUNGSC, Twitter and Instagram.
Angela, ANGELA_Scott10 on Instagram and Twitter.
Follow for a
So
follow!
you were a little bit slow.
I know, sorry.
Angela _Scott
I
10.
know. It's all the forms
You
of
have
Angela
Ashley
Scott.
Donahue. You have
Emma Onks.
I have Kurt Johnston.
Who's
yeah,
last?
Ace.
I missed it.
Mine is _UAC.
Oh, so you
Yo,
were-
we
I
see!
missed
Um,
I missed all the Angela Scott iterations.
Yeah.
on
Definitely
Instagram
follow
and
these
Twitter.
girls. They're doing awesome ministry. We love you guys. We'll see you next time.
Peace and blessings.